Hello, and welcome to another episode of Frame and Reference. I'm your host, Kenny McMillan, and today we're talking with Nick Mihm and Brandon Smith, the director and DP, respectively, of the new documentary In the Dark of the Valley, which premieres on MSNBC this Sunday, if you're hearing this come out, November 14th at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific. In the Dark of the Valley is a documentary about a nuclear event that happened at the Santa Susana Field Lab up in Simi Valley here in Los Angeles. Most people have not heard of this event. Happened in 1959, and essentially, quick answer, it hasn't been cleaned up, and it has been infecting the groundwater, and when that big fire happened, got tossed everywhere. And so this documentary not only chronicles that event and kind of what happened before and after, but also a few families that were affected and their fight to get the site cleaned up, and also obviously fight for their families, which have been affected health-wise. I will say this podcast is a bit of a nepotism podcast because I too very, very, very gently helped with this film, and these are actually two of my good friends. So with that being said, it's a fantastic documentary. Again, highly recommend you see it. MSNBC, November 14th, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 Eastern. But if at some point in the future you can on demand it, please do. It's shocking what the U.S. government, Boeing, and NASA have gotten away with. But yeah, so without any ados to be furthered, here's my conversation with Nick Mihm and Brandon Smith. To start, normally what we'll do is just figure out like kind of where you're coming from. So we'll start with Brandon. What got you into cinematography? Were you always visual growing up, or did that change over time? Did you do something else to start off?
I think it's where I feel like I'm still getting into cinematography. Like I definitely don't know what I'm doing. It started out as a hobby, just like photography. I like doing time lapses and night photography and stuff like that. And somehow I think I was working as a PA on a Netflix show, and the show went long. The AC quit. I became friends with the cam op who turned me. I think I jumped from a PA to a camera PA to an AC to like a junior op, like a C cam, all within the span of a show. That was like 6 months running, I think. And so I didn't move up like most DPs or cinematographers or cam ops do. It just kind of happened for me. And I like it, so I just keep going with it.
What was your initial intent, like starting as a PA? Like, were you just trying to figure out where you'd fit on a film set, or?
Definitely, I was trying to pay rent, and my friend Keenan Knight, he was working as a producer on the same show, and he asked if I wanted to come in as a PA for a little bit, and I did. And I always knew I wanted to be in like the film business somehow, but I honestly just wasn't sure how at all. Like I did the producer thing. I worked for production companies for a while. I played around with editing, but that was never really my thing either. So I got really lucky just jumping into the camera world. I'm still not good at all when it comes to the technical side of things, but.
Well, to be fair, like a lot of the DPs I've interviewed have all said kind of the same thing of like the technological advancement of cinematography and the joy therein is a relatively new thing.
Totally.
Most people just shot for, the image, not necessarily what took the image.
Right. And I think like documentary cinematography is totally different. I mean, I know it is different from, like shooting TV shows or movies or anything like that. It's not really like about, it's just different. It's more about being familiar with the subject and the story, and just being present when you need to be present, more so than it is about setting up the perfect shot.
Yeah. Would you say it is more like maybe not directing, but you kind of are in that same brain of it's less about maybe the image and more about the moment?
Definitely. Like, absolutely. I think for this specific project, it was great that we were all three, Derek, Nick, and myself, we're all three producers with cameras on set. So I think, while I have the DP credit on this one, I was not there for all of the most important moments. I've told Nick and Dee several times some of my favorite shots, or actually my two favorite shots were theirs. So it's about being in the right moment at the right time, I think.
And you, correct me if I'm wrong, but you kind of started off early on as a photographer, just like on your own time. Like you got it. What got you into photography?
Yeah, God, I have no idea. I started doing it. My brother talked me into getting a camera at one point, and I bought a little Canon 70D, and I thought that was the biggest purchase I was ever going to make, like, in my life. It felt huge. And I did a little road trip by myself, and as a way to keep myself busy, I think I just went out and took photos. I did a lot of night photography just because I was bored. I just wanted to get out of the car or the tent for a little bit, so I would just wander and take photos. Actually, one time I was in Arches National Park, and I thought it would be cool. Like, I had seen a photo of the Milky Way cutting through the Delicate Arch. And I was like, I want to get up there and see what that looks like in person. And I got there, and some guy showed up and taught a class on night photography. And so I learned so much just like by accident.
Well, you just happened to be there when a guy started teaching a class?
I was already there, and he rolled up. And there were a lot of people trying to take photos at the same time. So he kind of orchestrated the lights and the cameras and told everybody like when to, start their shutter and things like that. And it just turned into like a master class of night photography. And from there, I just kind of took those lessons and moved around. I think I was working as a PA on another job, and they had seen my time lapses that I just posted on Line or Instagram or whatever was around at that point. And they sent me out to do time lapses for the show. And I think that was part of what kind of got me some camera work later on.
Coming up, did you like look up to any photographers or DPs or anything like that, that you kind of mentally were like, I would like my stuff to look like that? Or was it all just kind of experimentation?
Totally experimentation. But I didn't know I wanted to be a DP or photographer or anything. So that was never anything I really looked into growing up. There was, all kinds of directors that I loved. I loved just movies in general. I was very into like the behind the scenes. I remember getting so many books about like the behind the scenes process for the Titanic. I had so many James Cameron just books of what they did on set. And I think, I don't know, maybe I knew that I wanted to get into, I don't know, something behind the camera at some point. But I don't know. Yeah.
For me, it was
good question. Yeah.
Well, the funny thing is, for me, is like I knew same thing. I knew I wanted to get into film. I didn't really know what, because I didn't know what jobs there were. Right. And then as I became a DP and like got through, years of like knowing the whole craft, I realized I should have gotten into props. That's what I was most interested in, was like filming the lightsaber is cool, but making the lightsaber is way cooler,
Are you still more into props now?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, like in spirit, like obviously my career is where it is, but like I've got a couple friends that work at Legacy. Like a couple of my friends built Grogu. And so and I'm just sitting there going like, you live in the dream. And of course their grass is always greener. They're like, well, yeah, your job is more interesting to us. And it's like, yeah.
No, that is cool though. I think it's all the stuff you don't know about, which makes it fun and interesting. And
yeah, learning's always more fun, I think. Once you've established that you kind of know something, it's like, well, now I want to learn something new.
Yeah, agreed.
Nick, what about you? What got you into filmmaking? Because you're not a DP.
No, I'm not a DP. I can barely run a camera. But yeah, I think what got in, like, if I'm honest, and I think both of you know this about me by now, it was the movie Jurassic Park.
Didn't want to interrupt.
It was definitely the movie Jurassic Park, and then just kind of the filmmaking of Steven Spielberg, to be like, I know that's as cliche as you can get, but I think I as a kid, I learned, I have Steven Spielberg books, like Brand was saying. I was always reading books about my favorite filmmaker, and one thing I learned about him was that he likes to focus on stories about ordinary people in extraordinary situations, right? And that kind of always stuck with me growing up, and I've always kind of wanted to kind of tell those stories, and it all kind of started as just like a really little kid, like 10, 11, 12, with a little video camera, making just like this. I don't know if we can cuss on this podcast, but
that's fine.
This is like the shittiest little horror films with my neighbors. And there were always sequels to famous ones, like The Ring. Like I made a sequel to The Ring in my backyard in my basement, right? I made a Jurassic Park sequel, I'm pretty sure, at some point, and with like a little Velociraptor puppet. And just kind of, so from a very young age, I've been trying to make stories with what I had, and they were not always successful. But I guess that love for it and that fuel and that fire for it that never died. So here we are.
What was it about Jurassic Park? Oh, go ahead, Brandon.
I was going to say, where are those shorts? Those are the ones I want to see.
Oh God, I'm sure my mom has them somewhere in the house.
I was going to say, what was it about Jurassic Park that, obviously it's a fantastic film, but what was about that movie? Because that whole era of, like, when is that, 97? Like that, there's like a 4-year stretch of films. Actually. Oh, that was 93.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, maybe I'm thinking of Lost World. But in any case, that era, even the 90s in general, just so many good movies that came out that are still today considered like the best. What was it about Jurassic Park that like really sat with you? Or was it just the moment of being a kid?
It was. I remember seeing that film on opening day with my mom, and like I was 4 years old, and I was standing in line at the theater in Denver, Colorado, and I just remember it so vividly. And it's I'm sure I have earlier memories than that, but that is like one of my earliest memories is watching Jurassic Park with my mom, and I don't know, it's just like, it just really captivates you. I think you guys have both seen it 1,000 times. It's you find something new about it every time you watch. I've watched it. I watch it several times a year for 30 something years. Like, so it's or however old that movie is. But yeah, it's just kind of ridiculous how you find something new, and then the graphics still hold up to this day. The T-Rex coming over the paddock in that one scene still is one of the most breathtaking scenes in the history of cinema, and it's so old. It's the earliest forms of CGI, and it's still some of the best images that you'll ever find in movies.
Do you find that CG these days takes you out of it, and because obviously the argument for everyone is like CG versus practical effects, but a lot of people don't realize that like a lot of CG is super hidden and you would never know. Like Blade Runner 2049, like a ton of that shit that looks like set is just set extensions. Squid Game, I thought the walls in Squid Game for like the red light green light game, those just blue screens. I don't know why they didn't just paint it, but like
yeah, I mean, you definitely have a better knowing that kind of thing, like where even in Social Network, the amount of CGI in that movie, you wouldn't think that's a movie with a lot of CGI, but it's just having the appropriate backdrops, and I think I appreciate it more when I know how subtle it is, when I know it's used for subtlety. When it's used for these big explosive things, it's cool, obviously, in its own right, but you do know it's fake, and you do you gotta get annoyed with it, I guess, at some points. But when it's subtle like that, like what you're mentioning, it's like I have a lot more appreciation for it.
Well, and I know as the resident Fincher stan, I do know that he uses a lot of CG to just make his life easier. So like if he needs to get a light in closer, but it's a lock off, they'll just bring the light in closer and then pull it away at the end and just comp out. They'll just replace the foot. Like anyone could do that in fucking iMovie, let alone Premiere. Just chop out or a boom mic.
Yeah, and then I think in the movie Parasite, I could be wrong, but I think in Parasite, the house that the actual practical house that they use is only one story, and then they but it's such a perfect and subtle addition to it, and it's like pretty mind-blowing what you can get away with, and no one will ever question it.
Yeah. When after your sort of seminal moment with Jurassic Park, were you just always into like anything that holy shit, I almost said Stanley Kubrick 3 times. Steven Spielberg, good Lord. Were you just always kind of like following what he did, or did that kind of expand your mind to other films, or was it kind of like a one-track kind of thing?
There was a lot of Steven Spielberg, obviously, but I think during that era, there's just so many kind of epic stories that I still like. Brandon, Derek, and I. Derek's the other producer on the film. That we still like talk about all the time, like Forrest Gump, Shawshank Redemption. Like those films all kind of came out around the same time, and are just absolutely timeless. They still move you no matter how many times you watch them. And I think a lot to do with it is the soundtracks of those films. Like all of us, the 3 of us, are always have the soundtracks on in the background when we're doing something.
Huge for a movie for us. Yeah.
I think I don't know. So those types of films always just really captivated me, and there's just something about you're watching a really good movie. It's kind of hard to explain. You're just watching a really good movie. You're hooked. You're addicted, and you're going to continue watching that. And anytime you find that feeling, it's just like you want to keep replicating it as you continue being a viewer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know you just said it's hard to explain, but I'll make you explain it. What do you think? Obviously, aesthetically, there are differences, but I too believe that there seems to be a sort of difference between most movies that are coming out now and ones that came out in the 90s, early 2000s. Mm-hmm. And one could argue, so like to your example of Shawshank, that did not do well in the box office. One of my favorite films, Fight Club, which apparently now you're not allowed to be a fan of, but not good, did not do well in the box office. And then on DVD found its stride, which nowadays that doesn't really exist. But can you pinpoint maybe something that you maybe see lacking in modern cinema, or maybe something that actually is reminiscent of the movies that you love from the sort of 90s and early 2000s?
Yeah, maybe. And I'm not just saying this because we're on a cinematography podcast, but I think it is the visual storytelling. You have for example, in Shawshank Redemption, you have that iconic shot of him crawling out of the gutter and then looking up to the sky and in the rain, and he's free. Or in movies like Road to Perdition, you have that scene in the rain with Tom Hanks, and
tell us about your other rain movies that you enjoy.
But I think you're missing. I feel like movies today we're missing those kind of like epic visuals that take I don't know, because it takes a lot of effort to do them. They're very expensive. I don't know. I'm just like, but you don't see as much. I did see it in. I bring it up again. Parasite. Parasite is a great example of visual storytelling. You have your main character going up the hill towards the rich neighborhoods, and it's like actual visual representation of his life, right? And so, and I think, maybe you're lacking that in some movies these days. It's very straightforward. You want to get the basic coverage instead of trying to give your audience a message through what's in your frame.
Well, and something I maybe would volunteer that I've kind of been thinking about is that contrast, right? Film, all cinema is contrast in some form. Loud and quiet, light and dark, and angry, sad, whatever. And nowadays, it's a lot easier to make 100%. It's a lot easier to make loud. Where before, if you really wanted that set piece, you had to put a lot of work into that set piece. And now Transformers is, not to harp on the one film that everyone picks on, but is one long set piece. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think maybe that contrast sometimes gets lost when it's so easy to make the shiniest thing.
Yeah.
And on that, I feel like pacing of films. I feel like they used to be much like you could get away with a slow burn back in the day, and I love that there's so many superhero movies now, like Transformers or like any of the Marvel movies, which I love. But I mean, they might be starting to come back around a little bit. Like The King on Netflix was a very slow, kind of a quiet movie.
Love that movie.
Oh, it's so great. And The Dig, Nick, you and I were just talking about The Dig the other day. That's another movie that, like, I mean, it came out on Netflix, but it doesn't feel like a Netflix kind of movie. It's not, made for the, the viewers with short attention spans and somebody who's just ready to get to the next fight scene or action scene or.
Yeah. And to retract my statement a little bit and to kind of go off what Brandon was saying, the movies that are telling stories well and that are using visuals to really to convey a message, they do exist. They absolutely
they're
exist
just not
in
the ones we always see in theaters.
They're just not mainstream anymore. They're Shawshank Redemption would be made today. It wouldn't be that successful. But I think we're grasping at what's easy to consume, but those movies do exist, and
I feel
more power to those filmmakers.
I don't know how do you guys feel? I feel like people are kind of starting to look for this almost in the same way that we're like longing to get back into a theater after the pandemic. I feel like we're like longing for like another kind of slow burn epic, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood kind of.
Look at the reaction to Dune. Dune is a 3-hour political drama, which is mostly talking, and people are fucking all about it, and it looks beautiful too. But
yeah, I haven't seen it yet.
Oh yeah, I mean it's fantastic, but so far it is literally like you might want to drink a coffee before you go in because it is kind of 3 hours of people talking.
Right, which is cool, which is great. It's different and exciting in that way.
It's cerebral, It's famously one of the more cerebral films. Right. I just saw Last Night in Soho. Either you seen that?
Yeah,
no, it's on my list this week,
bro. You got it. That's a good one, Brandon. What do you think of that?
I loved it. I mean, I'm a huge fan of hers to begin with, so I mean, I was going to love it no matter what. But
Anna Taylor-Joy's.
Yeah. It I don't know, man. It was just fun. I think I went to like a 1:00 showing right in the middle of the day. Just wanted to see a movie, and it just felt good. It felt like a movie, which I haven't had in a while.
Me and Danny saw it on on Halloween at like 8 p.m. So that really is not giving any spoilers to anyone who hasn't seen it, but it it was a perfect Halloween movie, man.
Yeah, it was great. It really was. Nick, get on it.
I'm on it.
The other one we just saw was French Dispatch. French Dispatch was also just like enjoyable. It felt. I think it's funny you say it felt like a movie because I think what feels like a movie to me is something that like I can't just get anywhere. I can't just like flip through Netflix or whatever and just because there's a lot of the same like So Last Night in Soho, very different, very magical in some ways. So that felt like a movie. French Dispatch was just so, I hate to use the word quaint, but like it's just like fuck it. But it's just like was fun. It was just enjoyable to watch, these mini vignettes in sort of Wes. I've never been like a huge Wes Anderson fan necessarily, but it's just a really. Nick, what's a film you've seen recently that got you going?
It got me going. Well, I was away for a while, so I'm kind of behind on the movies. But the last movie I saw in theaters was unfortunately Halloween Kills.
Oh man.
It was, I hope the filmmakers don't listen to this podcast, but
they don't.
It wasn't very good, and which was really disappointing because I'm a huge fan of the Halloween series. Like ever since I was a little kid, as I kind of like Jurassic Park, I would watch all the Halloween movies. And then when they rebooted it, in 2018, I absolutely loved that movie. It like brought back all this nostalgia of like being a little kid and scared of Michael Myers. like he was going to be hiding in your closet, and it was just like really perfectly done in my opinion. And
that's the one where he was in prison.
Well, he's in prison in the first one. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And
then
then he escapes. And then this one is a continuation of that film, like of the same night, and it tried its hand at political commentary. I think it had a little side story about like the January 6th riots, which was just
weird,
which was just unnecessary in my opinion. It just wasn't. It didn't come across well. It just kind of seemed cheesy, and it was very much a step down from the. I'm not a film critic, but it was very much a step down from the last one, which I still love to this day. So I'll continue watching the first one, and I look forward to the next one. And hopefully it's a little better.
Yeah, I mean it's so fucking weird that they just were like, hold on, let's be topical with a Halloween film.
Yeah, it was so obvious what they were trying to say, like very, very obvious.
Yeah,
like, look at this evil man and like causing this insurrection. Like it was not great.
It's like
I was pretty disappointed. I was actually very mad. If you ask my wife, I was walking out of the theater like, what the hell? Like I feel betrayed from this movie. But they have another chance. They're good. The third one comes out next year, and I'm looking forward to that.
They're making another one.
Yeah, it's the third of a trilogy, and so they have a chance to redeem themselves.
Yeah, Jamie Lee Curtis. I was about to say Jamie Lee Curtis needs the paychecks. No, she doesn't. She's just a fan of her own series. Kind of getting into the topic at hand, your guys' film. Nick, if you could give me like a synopsis sort of what the film's about, and then if the two of you could tell me how you got involved in the story, because it's not necessarily something, obviously it's something that almost nobody knows about, but not necessarily something that you just sort of happen upon even in a magazine or talking to a friend or something like that.
Yeah, that is the thing about the story. It's a huge story that no one knows about. So our film is In the Dark of the Valley, and it follows a group of moms in Southern California, just 30 miles outside of Los Angeles, who discover that there is a contaminated nuclear and chemical waste site up in Simi Valley. And
this is a documentary, by the way. This is a documentary. That made it sound like the start of another horror film. It is a documentary.
Yeah, I can start over. Our film.
No, that's fine. No. Yeah.
So our documentary follows these moms who discover that this site may have had contaminants move off site from the top of this mountain in the San Fernando Valley, and it could have possibly caused rare cancers in children and adults in the neighborhood. So the whole thing is chronicling their efforts to get the site cleaned up, which is owned by the Department of Energy, NASA, and Boeing. And it's just been a decades-long battle to clean up the site fully, and it's ongoing as we speak.
And that nuclear disaster happened what year?
So the nuclear disaster, a nuclear meltdown, partial meltdown, happened in 1959. And there have been decades of nuclear tests on that site. There was plutonium plants. There was all this radioactive material was tested there. And then they had decades of rocket testing. It's actually one of the places where they built the rockets that went to the moon. And so all those rocket tests left a ton of contamination in the soil there. And so it's just for decades, it's been, seeping into the ground and being moved by wind, fire, rain, you name it. And the only way to stop that migration of contaminants is to get rid of it. So these moms have taken upon themselves to try and convince the government to do their jobs and protect the community around them.
And so when did you guys get started? First, so how did you find out about this? And then what year did you kind of get started, realizing that, oh shit, this is something that more people need to know about, via documentary?
Brand,
you kind of hit the nail on the head. It's when you said it's not something you just kind of stumble upon. We did just stumble upon the story. It was we were hired by change.org to do a 2-minute you disappeared. There you are. We were hired by change.org to do a 2-minute petition video for the moms and the cleanup. And we never heard about it before. And so we started doing some interviews and some research, and we couldn't believe that this old rocket testing facility was so close to where we all lived here in Los Angeles. So as we did the interviews, we got more and more information about what happened up there. So we convinced change.org to let us turn the 2-minute video into 6-7 minute video. And even after that, there was still so much we wanted to tell that totally separately from change.org, we jumped into a feature with the three of us, me, Nick, and my brother, Derek. And even then it's an hour and 40-minute documentary that could very, very easily be 3, 4, 5 hours. There's just so much information out there. And even still today, the story's changing every day. So even if it were a 3, 4, 5 hour long series,
I think that's a series at that point. Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say it could continue just to, it continues yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how much it ruins a documentary, but this hasn't been resolved.
No. It hasn't, unfortunately. The crux of it is that the government had come to an agreement in 2010 with NASA and the Department of Energy so that the way it goes is there's the regulating California body is an organization called the DTSC, the Department of Toxic Substance Control, and they're the regulators of environmental cleanups. And so they set the standards of how much a company or a government agency should clean up their mess. And so 2010, they came up with an agreement with the Department of Energy and NASA to clean up the site to background, which means essentially the way you found it. And that was supposed to be done by 2017, and here we are, and it's barely started. They've gotten rid of some buildings, and they've made a little bit of progress, but it's just kind of scratching the surface on what actually needs to be done. This kind of gone. It's almost generational now about this cleanup fight. It's gone from decade to decade to decade. It's the same old story, and the cyclical nature of government kind of gets in the way of any progress being made. And unfortunately, it seems like we're in for more of the same moving forward. But hopefully the movie can spark some change and get something done.
Yeah, get some conversation going and people talking. And
yeah, because it is an intense. I was at the premiere, and or I guess not the whatever, the one over here, and it is something that makes a good movie, in my opinion, is one where the entire audience kind of is involved and you feel the collective energy. And that was your guys' documentary was one where you could just feel the entire audience just going fuck, especially because that it's up the hill, so it not only is it affecting people that you potentially identify with in the film, but you realize it potentially affects you, especially if you're someone who's lived in Los Angeles or your family has. So kudos there. Talk to me about how the production of the film went, kind of the more nuts and bolts. How did you get started? Did you just kind of grab the closest camera and start interviewing people, or was what was the process there? Because obviously the process of making a documentary is different than standard film. Pre-production's not quite the same, and this took 3 years, 4 years.
Yeah, 3.5 about.
Yeah. We were lucky in that because of what we were, when we started this, we were all kind of doing branded projects together, and through those projects we had a couple cameras. Brandon has a couple cameras that we use for those jobs, and we didn't have any financing for this film, and we never really got it at all. So it was really lucky that we had these cameras just kind of available to us. And so when things happened and because our work schedules are pretty flexible, we could just go up to, make the drive up to Simi Valley and meet with these families and schedule these interviews with these scientists and these journalists and stuff like that. We didn't really have to worry about, renting a lot of gear because, we had our own sound gear and stuff like that. Which is, it's something, I've worked on some other features and it's kind of, you have to very much budget out your days because, you only have a certain number of days with your DP. You only have a certain number of days of camera rental available to you. But here we kind of, being the noobs that we were, kind of just had time to figure out our plan and kind of feel our way around the story and see what we wanted to do with it. And I think it's a luxury you don't really get a lot. And then also, with Brandon being the DP, these other projects that I've worked on, you're changing DPs just based on their availability. And fortunately, and then, the look can change, it can stay the same, but, there's always kind of some difference in what you're seeing on the screen. But with Brandon, we were lucky that he was there for almost every shoot day. So the look of the film kind of stays true to what he, started at the very beginning. We have a constant visual motif that we keep going throughout the film.
Going back to the gear, we did have our own cameras, and I think when we started, maybe a light or two, but we did have to call in a lot of favors. We got lenses from my friend Scott. Kenny, I know we took your lights and C-stands over and over and over and over again. Just having friends who were willing to help out, I think that was it was a huge part, and also we couldn't have done it without them. So
so how did you write sort of the script for this? Because as far as I'm aware, I assume the more you learned, the more it changed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally.
We had from the very beginning, we knew that Melissa Bumstead, the main mom in our film, and the kind of the leader of this activist group, we knew that we wanted her to be like the spine of the story. We wanted to see, a character progression with her. And so we used her as a kind of our baseline and kind of built everything around her. The story obviously was constantly evolving. We never had like a real script out of it, but we had like a pretty, I work with visuals. I don't like reading a ton. So I had, kind of a cork board app where we had our story all kind of laid out in front of us, and it would be constantly moving things back and forth and swapping things. And so it was just kind of, even to the last day of our edit, we were always working through that document and kind of building the story out. We selected the themes that we wanted to focus on very early on, and more or less stuck to those themes as we continued production, and it really helped. It kind of helped to have that roadmap, especially on the shoot days. When you have that roadmap, you don't want to just ever shoot just to shoot, right? You want to have a goal in mind, and so having that roadmap is really helpful in kind of getting what we wanted to get and keeping our eye out for things. And that also helped, having a close-knit team. It was just the three of us, so we were all very familiar with that roadmap. And I didn't have to hover over Brandon's shoulders when we were on a shoot. Like, oh, make sure we get this because that will fit really well with this. They already knew all that stuff. So we kind of had our shorthand, pretty established, pretty well into the shoot, and it helped. It helped a lot.
Having a small team, this isn't really related to that question you were asking, but just having a small team, it's hard in so many different ways, but it's huge in a few very big ways. Like Nick was saying, like, I would know what we needed to shoot. Like, he didn't need to be there for every shoot day. Like, I knew, like, being one of the producers. In the same with D. D wasn't, the DP or the director, but as a producer, he was there on some of the most important days, even by himself. And Nick and I were able to trust him with that. And like knowing the families, knowing like Grace and Luke, the kids and the moms, just being able to be close with them and comfortable. They trusted us to, be there in some of like the most vulnerable times and moments. And I think that's huge. If you just had, a couple random day players there for a few days of interviews or a couple days of shooting, nothing feels comfortable. There's always that getting to know somebody's stage that, takes some breaking down.
Yeah, that made me think of two things. But the first one is pretty much all the documentarians that I've spoken to on this podcast have all kind of said something similar, which is that like almost the biggest part of being oftentimes is the case of DP on any documentary is just getting to know the subject, because any normal person is very aware of cameras. Mm-hmm. So once you're their friend, they stop caring and they're a little more open. And the podcast that Nick listened to about the Rebel Hearts team, like that was one thing that they were talking about with these old nuns, was like they wouldn't let anyone in this sort of retirement home except for this team, and they weren't allowed any gear or anything. It was just like small camera, hold it together, go in there, get the job done, because they were friendly with them. Yeah,
I think any project I work on now, it like the very first couple of days with whoever we're with, like we always try to schedule in 1 or 2 days where we have our gear in our hands, we have the cameras in our hands, but we're not shooting anything. So the people, the subjects, the characters, whoever they are, get comfortable with us having the gear. And then when the time comes to shoot, they kind of forget about it. So same thing. Just getting to know the subjects. That's the most important part, I think.
Yeah, we were very fortunate that, like you said, Kenny, any documentary filmmaker that you talk to will say the most important thing is access. And these families were so welcoming, and there were a couple families like the Hammersleys that it took. I don't think we shot with Lauren, until a few months after we started, and that's it's kind of the trust factor, and you have to like Brand said, you have to build that relationship, and we were really fortunate that these families were able to open their doors to us and give us this access, and it's the film wouldn't be as successful as it is without that, and I think a lot of from what we understand, a lot of other filmmakers have tried to make this movie and to try to tell this story, and it just hasn't panned out, and then for whatever reason it worked out for us, and we're pretty in debt to these families for letting us in.
Yeah. What sort of, I've spoken, I noticed after 37 interviews, so, over 40 hours of talking, that at some point I bring up having gone to ASU's film school during its, let's say, formative time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. Now it's fucking cool, and you and I, well, anyway, I was going to say, what are some things that you learned, coming out of, let's say, an average film school, didn't teach you? Things that they just, because the main thing that I've noticed with anyone I've interviewed is, there's a lot of, you learn on the day. You can only be so prepared. Mm-hmm. So what are the things that maybe you learned on this shoot that maybe someone listening who's working on either a documentary or a narrative type short or feature or whatever, just things that stood out to you that you're like, damn, that's a lesson that I'm going to remember?
Like a very boring answer is organization.
Yeah. That is not a boring answer.
There is just to organize everything, like name the folders. And I think, Nick, you did a good job of that. And Dee did a great job of keeping all of our receipts and writing down all the names of people we talked to in emails. Like he had a spreadsheet of all the names and people we had contacted and had not contacted. And when it came down to compile all that information into the delivery package, it was there somewhat. It was still very difficult, but I think without any like, had I gone into this film or project on my own, like the way I do things, the way I learned in school or college, like I wouldn't have made it through the delivery process, which would have been so frustrating. But be organized.
Yeah, I mean, I think generally speaking, kind of beyond this film, I think just being on sets, going out of college, like I learned more on commercial sets and film sets just as a PA than I ever did at school, and that's not a shot against Arizona State. It's just
as it stands now.
Yeah,
I've been pretty clear. At the time, it was new.
Yeah, I mean, I learned a lot at school for sure. But that experience on location is you'll never get that anywhere else. But man, in specific, like, yeah, definitely organization. I think I had to, and Kenny, you know this very well. I had to edit this film on my own because we didn't have the resources to bring on an editor. We, every once in a while we get some money in and we'd be able to hire some really talented editors like Alex Bose and Martina de Alba. But for the most part, it was just kind of me alone at my edit system. So it was, there was a huge learning curve on, processing speeds, how to manage your project in Premiere. So it doesn't get too big. Like I remember complaining to you quite a bit, and that's why you're a post consultant, credited as a post consultant on the film, Kenneth, is because the project would get too big and it would just keep crashing on me, and I didn't know why. And then then you just kind of have to reorganize things to free up some space. And so handling all this footage, because we had 50 something days of shoots for just this project, and so being able to manage all that media was really a huge challenge for me because I'm so not technically savvy that it's embarrassing. So learning how all the processing speeds and just keeping things organized from a very early point. It's like, okay, this is going to be your file structure on day one, and you have to maintain this, or else if this film is somehow bought by distributor, you don't want to be in that position where I can't find any of my shit. Right. I think that was a huge learning experience. It was just kind of handling all this media, and I'm still learning. We're cutting things today, and I'm still, struggling with it, but it's
workflow's huge.
Yeah, it's really big. And also I think also what I learned is use the people around you, ask questions. Yeah. Don't be afraid to ask a question. Because if you're trying to do it alone, you're gonna fuck it up. So you need to ask the experts that know what they're doing for some help. Even if you have to pay them a little bit, it'll save you so much time and frustration down the road. Ask questions as much as possible.
Brandon, were you gonna say something?
Oh, I was going to say budgeting. Well, I mean, for even reasons like that. So if you do have a question in the future, you have that money available so you can ask the question, or you can pay somebody for help, or you can pay the proper fees for music licensing, or archival licensing, or any of that stuff that can ultimately make or break your film, or shut your film down altogether. Just having that money ahead of time is huge.
We should make it clear to your audience that this was very much our first feature film. Just so these producers, these experienced producers who tune in, and God, these guys have no idea what they're doing. You are absolutely right.
Mick called us noobs early on, and that is 100% true.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolute first film, learning every day. We're better people for it, but it was definitely a challenge.
Well, and I do want to say, it does not look like a first film. It does not come off like a first film. It comes off just as good as any fucking documentary I've ever seen. I was very proud of you boys. But to your point on like stuff you kind of don't learn in school and learn on the job, I recently saw like a tweet from an editor, I believe, that I follow. And he was saying that he was talking to someone who ran a film school a guy who was teaching at a film school for 1 year, and he was a gaffer, really established gaffer, and literally just taught the students for 1 semester or a year how to light a set, just straight up. This is how you do this. And they let him go at the end of the year because they said it was too blue collar.
Yeah,
and it's
that
just
makes
like
a lot of sense.
Shit like that they did not teach us in school. Just straight up like, this is how from top to bottom you light a set. We never got that. Same thing with like, I guess they tried to teach us budgeting, but they were like, download Movie Magic budgeting, read the manual.
Right.
But and they don't teach you, if you're on a professional set, do not touch the grip team's gear. Just leave it alone. Don't touch if there's a camera PA, there's ACs, don't touch their shit. That's their shit. And they will yell at you. And camera crews are intimidating people. That's what I've learned.
Yeah, Brandon, I don't actually know. Where did you go to school?
I went to the University of Oregon, but not for film.
Oh, right.
Yeah, journalism and documentary film. So it's
so you're using your degree.
That I didn't think I was going to, barely, I think, but yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. So to sort of the good news at the end of the, not that we've like harped on the bad news of the subject of the documentary, but it people can watch it. This is going to go up on Thursday, so in a couple days from when we're recording this. But the people can watch it on MSNBC, right? On when?
Yep. Yeah. So the film premieres. We were very fortunate to get the film acquired by MSNBC, and the film will premiere on MSNBC on Sunday, November 14th at 10 p.m. Eastern, and we're super, super excited about that. I think the whole point of this project was to give families and that whole community a bigger platform, because as we mentioned earlier, it's a big story that no one's heard of. Even people who live in that neighborhood have never heard of the Santa Susana Field Lab. And there have been news stories, KMBC LA, they've done a running kind of segment about it for a long time, since 2013, I think. And there's been LA Times articles, but never has it gone national. Or very, very few times has it gone national. And I think this is a great opportunity for this community to finally be heard by the masses, and for the whole country to kind of know what's going on. And one thing that we point out in the film is that Santa Susana in the Santa Susana Field Lab, in relation to other like nuclear sites and contaminated sites around the country, is very, very small. It's a huge problem here, but in the grand scheme of things, it's a small site. And there are so many communities that are dealing with the same thing, that don't have the luxury of LA being right next door, and for filmmakers to come up and make a documentary about it. So hopefully this kind of calls attention to other sites that need to be remediated as well. And we're hoping for this movement to kind of spread. And MSNBC hopefully will provide that opportunity.
Yeah, I remember at one point in the film, there's like a map that shows up, classic Indiana Jones style, and it shows all of the various sites that exist around the country, and it's fucking bonkers. Like,
it's huge. Yeah,
we think of like 3 Mile Island, and that's it.
Yeah, and what we mentioned in the movie is that this partial meltdown that happened in LA actually released more radiation than 3 Mile Island, and no one knew about it. So, you're closer to these types of sites than you think, and it's terrifying, and it's tragic, and they all have a purpose, and I'm sure the original goal of those sites was admirable, but if you make a mess, you got to clean it up. So hopefully this lights a fire under their ass a little bit.
Yeah. Well, and I think we all want clean energy, but it always comes down to mismanagement, cutting corners, Yeah.
All comes down to human error, and then, in some cases, and and this is my belief with San Jose Field Lab, it comes down to greed, and it comes down to apathy. And so it's just a sad reality that we're dealing with in Southern California.
Yeah. Before kind of doing our little cap-off segment, I did want to ask, sort of as an educational thing for people listening, like you said, this is your first feature film. Getting a movie made can take all kinds of forms. Movies have been made on iPhones, literally, not Austin. What was that movie? Was it Rubber? There's another movie made on an iPhone.
I've seen so many shorts recently made on iPhones.
Yeah, but in any case, that's neither here nor there.
That last scene in Florida Project.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what that movie's called, right?
When they go to Disneyland or Disney World.
Yeah, they shoot that on.
Yeah. Well, but then there's also the just thinking about movies that get made in weird ways, like that movie that was shot in Disney World. They made like a whole film in Disney World. It's like a horror film.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. It's an interesting kind of gross, like in a good way, but like gross kind of interesting film. Right. Well made. But point is, for people listening, you can make your film however you want. How did you guys get it distributed? Because that's the hardest part, is getting people to watch it. Obviously, you could just put it on fucking YouTube if you wanted. But I know you took it to some festivals. What was that sort of timeline like from picture lock, more or less, to now having it on, in this case, MSNBC?
Yeah, Nick, I'll let you run with that one.
So from the very beginning, it's funny because people would ask us when we were editing the film, like, hey, when is this going to be out on YouTube? And that was never... I don't know how many times, like, we got asked that a lot.
Can we get a
that
copy?
was never our goal. We always had a pretty...
Yeah, hit me with the Vimeo link.
Yeah. Which is fine. Like, Vimeo is a great platform for films. And, I've watched feature films on Vimeo and it's fine. But that was never our goal. I think if that's where it would have ended up, I think, we wouldn't have done our jobs. We always had that higher goal. And it all started with festivals. And the festival circuit, so we just needed to make a festival-worthy film, and the way it got distributed actually was just by sheer dumb luck. We have a friend that works at a company called Embassy Row, and we were cutting our sizzle, I think at the time, just our fundraising tool, and the sizzle was great. It was cut by our friend Alex Bose, who's a great editor, and he really set the tone for our project. But we make this sizzle, we send it to our friend at Embassy Row, and she just happened to be in the room with a woman named Shannon Perry, who was leaving Embassy Row for another job at Village Roadshow Television, and was going to be, I think, their VP of reality TV or something like that. I'm butchering the job title, but was going to be an executive over at Village Roadshow, and she saw the sizzle with our friend and said, "Give me their contact information, and let's, I'll option the movie for them, and hopefully we can find them a buyer." And so it was just happened. She just happened to be there, happened to be like kind of looking over our friend's shoulder, our friend Anna, and so we got just very, very, very lucky because we were sending it around town and we weren't getting much traction. And this is just kind of how it happened.
You always hear those dumb luck stories of how actors get discovered, like walking through the mall or ordering a cheeseburger, and they end up becoming these like the biggest A-list celebrities out there. Like that was our dumb luck story for sure.
See, I somewhat disagree with that sentiment because from what I'm hearing and what I know, this didn't happen overnight. You spent 4 years making a compelling story. You spent however many years going through, school and just working, PA, fucking whatever, making friends, making connections. I've said on this podcast a lot that like one of the luckiest things that happened to me, and, probably Nick could say the same, and Brandon, you're involved too, is like when Brandon didn't go to ASU, but when we all left, there was like 10 of us that left ASU and came to LA. So we already had a minor network. And then when we started working at various jobs, we had various connections that we could lean on. And so I think it's easy for maybe someone listening to go like, oh, you just so happen to be on the phone with someone who fucking worked at Village Roadshow or whatever. But that's not the case. You only get those connections by putting in the work at first.
Sure.
And then it's not so much luck. It is luck in the sense that the timing happens that way, but it's preparedness and being willing to pull the trigger or able to pull the trigger when those opportunities arise.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I think and you asked what we learned on this project, and I think this is one great thing that I learned is that if you surround yourself with great people, great things happen. And in college at Arizona State, we surrounded ourselves with great people, and this Anna became one of our best friends, and she surrounded herself with great people and Shannon Perry, and it all pays itself forward. And she really saw that what we were doing, what we wanted to do, and she believed in it. And she did take a chance on a couple of filmmakers that didn't really know. I don't think she knew that we didn't know what we were doing, but she took a chance on us. And then MSNBC is also taking a chance on new filmmakers, which we really, really appreciate it. And I think it's a huge lesson that we've learned, is just surround yourself with good people and good things happen.
Yeah, and I think that kind of answers your question from earlier on, Kenny. It's like what did you learn through this process that you didn't learn in film school or somewhere else? But I think being prepared, setting yourself up for when that moment might pop up.
Yeah, and I think that is the secret too with film school, is like no matter what film school you go to, you're going to learn something to do with film. But what you're really going to do is meet a bunch of people who are similarly engaged or not. I mean, certainly there's a bunch of people that we know that became real estate agents or something, completely gave up on it. But surrounding yourself with people who are similarly passionate about the art, and then pursue it.
Yeah, and I think like even if you don't go to film school and you want to be a filmmaker, I think still, whatever profession you're in, if you listen to people and hear their stories, I think that's all a film is. That's all a movie is somebody else's story. So, I mean, like really, like going to film school kind of had nothing to do with this project. I think this project had everything to do with us listening to someone else's story. And so I think, whether you go to film school or not, I think that's, one thing you could focus on.
Yeah. So the way that we like to cap off every interview is kind of with the same two questions. The first one being, oh man, I haven't done an interview in a while. I can't remember them. The first one is, first one is basically what's one piece of advice? Oh, now I remember. What's one piece of advice that you received, whether it have to do with film or not, but something that's just stuck with you for, an appreciable amount of time, or something that you really apply to your life day to day. And we can start with whoever thinks of it first, but obviously if it's film related, it's more on topic.
Does it have to be something that was actually told to us, or just something it can be? No, something.
Heard? Yeah.
Okay. Hang on, I look like I have a receding hairline right now.
We can't edit that out.
Which I do not.
Wait, can you say that question again?
What's a piece of advice that you either received or stumbled upon that had an appreciable effect on either your career trajectory or even your life, which in a lot of cases for filmmakers are kind of inextricably linked?
I'm going to come up with another answer while Nick's talking. But the first, I don't know why this came to my head, but like the first thing that pops into my head is just be nice, be a good person.
Bro, everyone has said that. That's not a bad piece of advice.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's, credit my mom and dad. Like that was like their one lesson. God, I mean, every day, like leaving for school, it was just be nice, like have fun, be nice. Don't be mean, have a good time, but treat people the way you want to be treated. And like, honestly, I think that's how you surround yourself with good people. Like you were saying, Nick, I think if you're nice, you'll surround yourself with other nice people. And if you're able to do, I don't know if I like where this answer is going, but it's just, yeah. Nick, you jump in. I'm gonna think of another one.
I haven't thought of my answer yet because it's a really hard question. I think my guess my kind of cop out answer, because I'm folding under pressure, is it's not a piece of advice that was ever given directly to me. It's just something that I've learned watching a ton of interviews by this person, and it's Quentin Tarantino. And he's pretty unapologetic when he says he's stolen from every movie that he's ever watched. Mm-hmm. And I kind of love that because, you like, I don't know how many different documentaries and scripted narratives are probably in our movie. With, like I couldn't tell you, oh, this scene is an homage for lack of a better word, is an homage to this scene from this really famous movie. Because I think it's just kind of, you watch these movies so many times, as you're growing up, and they kind of get embedded in your brain, and it's kind of becomes your second nature to pay them respect by putting those ideas in your film, and trying it a different way, but you kind of using that baseline idea to tell your story. And I'm sure there's a lot of Jurassic Park in our activist documentary. But
I mean, even in some of the animations,
but yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That animation that we use in there is like, we've got a very dark tone. And there's definitely a little bit of Christopher Nolan.
Or the Batman animated series.
Yeah, absolutely. And I still watch that series, so
it's so good.
Yeah.
The one what was I going to say? When you were saying steel, I think a theory of mine that I've had for a while is I think a lot of people worry about being derivative, and certainly that can happen. No one wants to just straight rip somebody off, but I think once you build enough of a palette of films that you enjoy and you're stealing from multiple sources, you're no longer being derivative. Now you're being an artist. Mm-hmm. Like, it's everyone. You're part of it. I feel like if you're truly interested in the art form and not just about making moving pictures, or because now there's like vlogs and stuff, which I would not say is necessarily filmmaking specifically. If you truly feel like you're part of the art form, you're part of a lineage, and you should be able to point to where your inspirations and your references come from, and kind of what made you the artist that you are today.
Agreed.
You just made us feel so much better about stealing from other people.
Well put. Thanks for justifying it.
Danny, actually, me and Danny were talking yesterday. She was saying she actively, her dance teacher told her to literally, she said out loud, steal from, look at your people dancing next to you, and if they do something you like, steal that, make that yours.
I mean, I think it's impossible to not be influenced by everything you watch, and if it moves you, then in some way you do want to replicate that feeling that you have when you watch that movie or watch that TV show. And so, I think that'll be true with, every project moving forward for me personally.
Well, and there's no, I don't think any singular person, except for some like generational talents, are ever solely responsible for something they've made. I don't think anyone's just been like, I've never seen a movie and now I'm going to make something wholly original,
Yeah, you're more. You're more full of shit if you're saying this is the most original thing that's ever come out. It's like, that's not. Yeah. So I appreciate Tarantino owning up to it and being like, I've stolen everything.
Yes, Brandon, go ahead.
I would like to add on. I would like to add on to my answer. Be nice, be kind, like just be a good person. It's easy. It doesn't take work. Also, trust other people. I think that is like the biggest lesson I've learned over like the past couple of years, because I always wanted things to be the way I wanted them to be. And if you trust other people to do their job, as we had to do on this project, things will work out.
Yeah.
It
would have been impossible to do this just ourselves. So we're completely, we owe the world to, our composer, Katie Jarzbowski, who, brought so much of her personality into the movie. And, again, was teaching us how to do it this is, you have to be picture locked, and this is how you're going to deliver materials to me, and this is how the notes process is going to be. And it was so much fun learning that process. And then Elise Kelly and her team, who did all the animation. We have 3 animated sequences in the film, and that was such a fun learning experience for all of us. And it was like any time those 2 genius women would show us a piece of music or an animated sequence, it was like we always called it Christmas, because it was such a new, because it was so new every time, and it was just made the experience so exciting and so fun. And those 2 artists, really, they're just complete artists,
like true artists.
Really gave the movie a lot of personality, and we love them for it.
100%.
Really awesome.
Yeah, the music and the mixing too are just like, seeing it in a theater is really, it's dope. It's going to be on TV, but hopefully it can hit like a theatrical release, because that mix is pretty interesting. And also, Brandon, to your point, the sort of like decentralized command thing of just like letting people do what they want. I think when you trust people with, a large, what appears at least to be a larger chunk of the final product, they become more invested. They put their best effort. Yep. I know for a fact, if you tell people like, you're a peon, you get your paycheck, do what I say, and it has to be my way, they're going to phone it in every time.
Well, yeah, it becomes a paycheck, and that's all it is. You want to get through the day, and it's not a passion project. But even beyond that, I think it just like any project, not just this one, but it's better off with a big collaborative effort from everyone. So if you allow people to do their jobs, more people are collaborating. So like you said, it's just, more passion involved.
And we know for a fact that those 2, Katie and Elise, did not do this for the money, because we did not have a lot. So we were very much appreciative of the amount of work they put in for very, very little resources.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and I think a big key, again, is not to keep giving you the OTPHJ, but it is like, it's a film that I think if anyone saw it, would welcome the ability to participate, because it is a really great piece of work. There's actually a follow-up question, which is much simpler, which is, what is a film that each of you think someone should watch besides yours? Something not necessarily a recent film, but something that you think like, what, more people need to see, in cold blood or whatever.
Right. What is the name of it, Nick? I know you know what movie I'm thinking of. It came out on Amazon. It was about aliens.
The Vast of Night.
Yes. That movie. More people should see that movie, because there is a slow burn to it, and it has a very Steven Spielberg, J.J. Abrams kind of vibe. It's awesome.
That movie.
Another independent film.
Yeah.
Another independent film. Yeah. I think their budget was so low. I heard this. I don't remember where I heard this, but the most expensive part of the film, it was set in the 1920s?
1950s.
50s.
It was the gym, right?
It was set in a time when the 3-point line had not been created. So the most expensive part of the movie was there was a long tracking shot that went into the high school gym. They had to remove the 3-point line from the floor and paint it back after they were done with the production. And that was the most expensive part of production. So I've heard.
That's fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
It's that movie really, that's a good call, Brand. That movie stuck with me for a long time.
That's a good.
It just makes you feel. Yeah, it's one of those movies that's like makes you just feel really good after you watch it. Like the ending of it, I won't spoil it for anybody, but it's just, you're just like, oh yes, like that is a perfect moment. That is a perfect mesh of beautiful visuals, amazing acting, and really good music. A really good, composer.
And it's almost really Sorkin-esque dialogue.
Yeah,
that opening scene is quick.
Yeah. It's quick dialogue, but it's a single shot, right?
Yeah.
The scene where she's at the switchboard.
Oh man.
She's there for so long, and you don't realize it's how. Yeah, that's the longest take ever, and she kills it. Like the acting, the actors, they kill it in that movie. And it's so good, so good.
Vast Night.
Vast Night's great. Nick, do you want to stick with that one, or do you want to add another one?
Looking at my posters.
Don't let them
Go see Skyfall.
Go see Skyfall. I mean, I think everyone who I've talked to loved this movie, but Jojo Rabbit immediately came into my it's a top five movies I've ever seen, and I've seen that movie so many times. That's definitely a movie that makes you cry, makes you laugh all at the same time. So it's.
Did I see that with you?
Yeah, I think we saw it at the ArcLight at the Dome.
Yep.
I feel like Nick saw it 10 times in theaters. He probably saw it with
everybody.
Yeah.
I just got the poster, and it's hanging up nice and beautiful in my office. It's
awesome.
Love it.
Well, thanks for doing the old podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, man.
A lot of fun chatting. Hopefully, the MSNBC is only the start of more people being able to see it. And are you guys going to be still doing festivals going forward, or is that kind of over now?
Over as of now.
This moment. Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
We were fortunate. We'll plug our own victories, but we were fortunate enough to win best documentary feature at Ojai, LA Docs, Phoenix Film Festival, and Catalina Film Festival. So we had a great festival run. That's if anyone is looking to make a movie and wants to submit it to festivals, it's the most fun. Like going to a film festival and showing your film in front of a crowd is so rewarding and really cool. And you meet a lot of cool filmmakers. And
going to the festival. Like the virtual festivals were cool, but it's like going to summer camp every time. It's awesome.
So fun.
Yeah, there was a couple documentary DPs who had said, or just, I'm pretty sure they were all doc DPs, but same thing. They had the virtual like Sundance or whatever, and they were like, it's cool because you get to see a bunch of movies that you wouldn't have been able to see either way. But I remember specifically, his name escapes me right now, but he was saying that he was like, you would start doing the interview and it was no different than where you edited the damn thing. And like, is that feeling that you're saying of like being there and showing it, and that why kind of everyone gets into filmmaking wasn't there. And so that release didn't quite happen.
Yeah. I don't think there's no more satisfying feeling than screening it in front of an audience. That's an extremely new sensation for me. So and for all of us. And so that was really rewarding. And and then seeing it with the families as well that participated in the film, and you kind of watching their reactions, as they watch themselves on screen going through this terrible time. And that was like, that's something that you don't get to do in a lot of professions. So we were grateful for the experience.
And you get to meet. So like Q&As are great after a movie, but being able to go have a beer with the filmmakers after, you learn so much more about the story and their process and them as individuals. Like, I can't tell you how many new friends I made in this short amount of time just at those festivals. Yes. So submit and go if you get in.
100%. Well, thanks again. And I'll probably Nick, I'm going to see you tomorrow. So
see you at dinner.
All right. I'll talk to you guys later.
Kenneth, for real, man. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
Later, Frame and Reference is an Owlbot production. It's produced and edited by me, Kenny McMillan, and distributed by ProVideo Coalition. Our theme song is written and performed by Mark Pelly, and the F@R Matbox logo was designed by Nate Truax of Truax Branding Company. You can read or watch the podcast you've just heard by going to provideocoalition.com or youtube.com/owlbot, respectively. And as always, thanks for listening.